All right, welcome to Starting Five here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at 5 Reasons Sports. Today's producer is Manny Chang. We'll talk about our sponsors, and then we'll get to the show. I do want to mention we got a lot of stuff on the channel now, so if you're just finding the channel now, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, and check everything out. We've got everything that happened in Hialeah last night. We've got post-game interviews from Jimmy Butler, Eric Spoelstra, and more. Last night's post-game show is on there. I appeared with Jeff DeForest and Mike Lubitz about half hour ago on Team No Sleep right now. So check everything out. Tell everybody about it. And make sure you turn your notifications on. We're making a big push for that because a lot of people don't know when the content's coming. It's coming all day long. We had a Dolphins stream on there earlier today. And we're going to have lots of Panther stuff coming up over the next week and a half, 2 weeks. As basically the Heat and Panthers are alternating. Not quite, but pretty close. Alternating finals nights until at least the second week of June and perhaps the third. Good morning, Van. We will put this on the podcast feed as well. If you're listening on the podcast feed, it sounds a little strange just because it's on the YouTube channel, and I do the show a little bit differently than I do Five on the Floor. It's solo, and it's with viewer comments. Do want to mention two of our sponsors here, the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We also want to mention, if you want to sponsor us, reach out to us because we've got a few slots available for both the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Finals, and this is how we compensate our content creators. So essentially, if you want to keep the content coming and you want to promote your business, reach out to me by DM at the 5 Reasons Sports Twitter account. All right, let's tell you about our two sponsors here. Our guy, Danny, he was happy last night. All Pro Construction Builders. Find them at allproconstructionbuilders.com. Quality is their specialty. We know in South Florida, it's always hurricane season, right? Well, it really starts in August in real time, but you want to get yourself protected today. So get the storm windows, get the storm doors, or if you just want to renovations to your property, they can do this for you. We know right now kind of hard to find a house, right? So you want to redo something with yours, reach out to our guy Danny and his team over at allproconstructionbuilders.com. They're based in Dade County. They service Monroe and Broward as well. The phone number, 305-484-4429. Mention 5 Reasons to get a discount. They are state certified general contractor. They do the additions, they do the renovations, the carpentry, and so much more. Again, 305-484-4429. Danny and his team, he's got a family business there. They will take care of you right away. Also can find him on Instagram. Also, our guy Mark Delacruz over at ubreakwheelfix.com. We know the streets of South Florida, they can be kind of nasty on those wheels. Check them out at 305-748-0112. That's with a U at the front. ubreakwheelfix.com, based in North Miami, but not just the repairs, but also they can do refinishing there too, and they can get you all the custom colors. Maybe you want to get some Heat colors, some Panther colors. Do it at ubreakwheelfix.com. Check out their work on the website and also update it daily on Instagram. That's with a U at the start. All right, let's get to it. This is the aftermath, right, of what, in my view, and I said this last night, is the most unlikely story in Miami Heat history, and in a lot of ways the most satisfying. And I understand that down the road, people are going to say, did they win a title or not? Because ultimately, that's all that the historians care about. But for South Floridians, I think this one is always going to be unique, special, and fun. Because this was not expected. And anybody at my network who says it was expected is lying. Maybe we were a little bit more circumspect than some others in the content creation space who just wanted to trade everybody and didn't see any hope for this team. I think we saw some hope, but we didn't see this. Okay, I believe pretty much everybody at our network had them going out to Milwaukee in the first round. I did. Now, I had them in 6 against the Knicks, and I had it going 7 against the Celtics. I wavered back and forth as the series kind of went on and even beforehand. But I did not see this coming. I'm not going to say that I did. And I just think that as you take a look at what they accomplished, it is in Miami Heat history, which is one of the greatest histories in team sports. If you look at the last quarter century, I put this up there yesterday. 10 of the last 13 Eastern champions have been either the Miami Heat, LeBron James, or both. Okay. And what I said was, it's time to stop separating the two and saying that one made the other. The reality is it worked because of who they both were. And you're talking about the greatest player of this era And you can make an argument that it's the best organization of this era. I understand that the Warriors won more championships. I understand what the Spurs were until their recent decline. But the Heat are certainly in that conversation. And they're above the Celtics, by the way. And that might be the most satisfying part of this. Because we can talk about Tatum's ankle, and we can talk about other circumstances that he didn't shoot well. But I don't know why these excuses only apply to Boston, but they didn't apply to Miami from the outside. I know why they didn't apply on the inside, because the Heat wouldn't let them be excuses, because Eric Spoelstra doesn't believe in excuses. If there's one thing that's consistent about his coaching tenure is that he does not tolerate that crap. I have tried on the side for years to get him to blame this or blame that or whatever. He will not do it. If you start to do it with him, you'll kind of get that side eye. He sort of goes into space a little bit. He starts talking about something else. He won't do it. He won't do it. So, yes, was there disappointment about Hero's injury? Yes. Oladipo's injury? Yes. Some of the things that they dealt with during the season? Yes. Some of the things that some of them are dealing with personally, some of which we know about, but we haven't really broadcast out there, but will explain some of the, I will say, choppiness of the season. Okay? But he won't do it. He refuses to do it. I mean, we sell a T-shirt in our store. We encourage you to check out the store. We have enough. Because that's essentially what they believe. They have enough. Even when it seems absolutely ridiculous. Because if you look at what had to happen for them to get here, you needed guys, forget the undrafted label. It's ridiculous and demeaning at this point. But you had to have guys play so far above the level that NBA scouts and observers anticipated they could play at. And you had to have the foresight as an organization to project certain guys. And that's the thing that gets missed here. Because a lot of conversation about what they didn't do this offseason and they didn't get the big fish and all the rest of this. Well, they did re-sign Caleb Martin. And all year long, Heat officials, whenever I would omit that, I'd get the text. You realize we did something this offseason. We kept a player that was attractive on the open market. But nobody wanted to hear it. Because they should have kept PJ Tucker too, right? And we talked about that. They had one mid-level exception. They had one vehicle. It was not tax-related, by the way. That part of it was not tax-related. They had one vehicle, a mid-level exception. Once PJ wanted the 3 years in the $2 million range, Miami couldn't do that without being hard capped, okay? Because they would have had to use bird rights, all the rest of that. They had one vehicle. Once PJ didn't take it, they went to Caleb, and they offered him what they could offer him. Because he wanted to max out what he could at this point of his career. For PJ, it was the last big contract. For Caleb, it was his first. And look at that move now. And not only look at the move, they wanted to keep PJ Tucker. So no denying that. They've never denied that. But Caleb Martin doesn't do this if PJ Tucker's still there. So as an organization, you have to have the foresight to see what a player can become. And that's something that other organizations didn't see. Not just the Hornets, by the way. We can mock the Hornets, and Jordan's a buffoon when it comes to managing a team and all the rest of that stuff. And all of that may be true, okay, for releasing him. They kept one twin, but not the other. But every other organization could have signed this guy too. Every other organization could have talked about this too. And thank you, Van. We were talking about it all summer. We tried, but nobody wanted to listen to us. But they didn't. They didn't, right? I mean, like, the Heat signed him to the two-way. We're not talking about some team signing to a veteran minimum and giving him a shot. No, and the veteran minimum at his level of tenure in the NBA is nothing. They signed him to a two-way. Like, literally, any team could have jumped in there and taken him from them. In the same way that if you go way back, okay, to 2003, after Udonis Haslem had to go overseas and eat a bunch of food that he said he couldn't pronounce, right? I was on San Antonio's summer league team, and I covered that summer league, okay? And I remember UD being there, and Israel Gutierrez, my good friend and host now of 4 Years of Heat podcast, which you guys should check out. He talked about this with us last week, and he said, I saw Udonis the first time. I was like, is that Udonis Haslem? Because Izzy went to UF. He covered him at UF because he had lost so much weight. The Heat had to project Udonis to what he was going to be, right? This fat guy at Florida, what was he going to be in the NBA? And they had to make sure that they got that guy, that he didn't go when he was on another summer league team to that team's training camp and stay with that team. And now we are here roughly 20 years later with the Caleb Martin decision to bring him in the first place and then to retain him and to see a role for him. I had a Heat executive text me last night. I was talking about Caleb, and he says he stayed here because he felt this was the platform for him where he could grow. You know, that matters. It's not just about signing the best player you've ever heard of. I understand that's a big part of what the Heat have done, right? Hello, Marcus. I understand that's a big part of what they've done. But it's not just about finding the disgruntled superstar like they did with Zoe, like Pat did with Shaq, like Pat did with Mashburn to a degree, and Hardaway, and Dragic, right? And Bosh and LeBron, okay? And Jimmy. It's not just that. And it's not just the draft, even though occasionally the Heat will strike big there, whether it's a Wade or a Hero or a Bam or a Karan. But it's also about projecting what a guy can be in your organization, your system, because you know it. And so that's when people start to mock the whole Heat culture thing, which I've mocked too during sort of the down years, the white side years, as we call them, right? Because my whole thing was you can keep saying Heat culture, Heat culture, Heat culture, but if you don't have players who have the want to or have the ceiling that's high enough, all the Heat culture in the world isn't going to get you there. Eventually you need, you need some star level talent. Okay. But what Heat culture to me is really about is knowing yourself. It's about knowing what your organization is capable of doing and what it's not. Which players it can work with and which it can't. Who can be better than they were before somewhere else with you. And so it's projecting that Gabe Vincent, who had never really been a point guard, who was kind of a chucker, could play more of a point guard role in the NBA. It's projecting that Caleb Martin, who had athletic ability, had hops, had pretty decent form on his jumper, could be more than maybe he was for his first couple of years in the NBA after he had been a primary scorer in college. It's about Max Strus and seeing athleticism there that other teams didn't see. He was in Boston's camp. There, we're back. The Heat looked at him and saw athleticism. They saw toughness. They saw a guy that other people could play with. And then you look at the way that Jimmy Butler took to him right away. I remember when Max first started to get some minutes, and he was basically carrying Jimmy's bags. And I talked to somebody close to Jimmy, and he goes, don't mock that guy. Jimmy loves that guy. Jimmy trusts that guy. And look what he's accomplished, being a starter. Even performance was a little choppy, but last night, hit a huge three off a carom that came out to him. They won a lot of games with him as a starter in the playoffs the last 2 years. And then Haywood Highsmith, okay, who looked like the worst offensive player we'd ever seen during the time that he got time earlier in the season. He had some PJ Tucker-like qualities. And you saw them last night. That steal might have been the play of the game. And now you can see a little more from him. And what's he going to be after another summer? And so stop worrying about whether they're going to overpay these guys, okay? Yeah, they'll make some mistakes. They'll overpay some of them. They'll keep someone who maybe they could develop another one and they can replace them. And I've made that case at times before too. And we know that these guys are typically not better